Alright everyone, welcome back to the second session. From the previous video, we have learned about the building vocabulary section in the Writing Write 3 book. So in this video, we will study the lesson which is from the blueprint lesson. But this one is the grammar lesson, so I decided not to take the lesson from your blueprint book because it is not very detailed. So I try to find another detailed lesson and easy to understand for you, because when students study at the lower level, mostly when they hear the word passive, they kind of afraid of this, right? From my experience, this one is the most difficult lesson after the present perfect tense. So for this document, I find it really simple and easy to understand because the explanation, the example are very clear to understand. So here, let's look at the introduction. For the introduction, they want you to understand the general form of the passive verb form. If you look at the two posters right here, we see the passive form written on the poster. Our bread is back here. Okay, this jacket was worn by Elvis Presley, right? So these are the passive form. So a passive verb is a form of be plus a past participle, or we can call it verb 3, right? Some participle are irregular. So you can see on page 382 and 83. Actually, this lesson I extracted from a grammar book. If you want to find an irregular verb, you can find it online. It's very easy to find. So the general form of passive verb is the to be verb. It can be in the present tense, or be in the past tense, or be in the perfect tense, and plus a past participle, which is verb 3. So this structure generally known as the passive verb form. Okay. So here, if you look at the tenses, these are the popular tenses in English. We have present simple, present continuous, present perfect, past simple, past continuous, and past perfect. And we have two different forms. Actually, we are not talking about the usage of the tense, right? We just emphasize the form. When we talk about the usage of the tense, it is the same. We specify the time. But for the passive, we want to emphasize something else that we are going to look at later. But this one, let's look at the form of the verb 10 right here. So here, if you use the present simple in the active form, we back the bread here. See, the subject plus verb, simple verb. But if you want to write it in the passive form, you change the subject and then you try to find the structure, which is to be plus past participle. Okay, so all the form has to follow the rule to be plus verb 3. As you can see, is back. When you see the word being, it is in the continuous tense. So these are the general rule of the passive form. You can also use the passive form in the future and the modal verb as well. So if you look at the example here, we will back the bread here. So the bread will be back next. Okay, so whether it is in the past tense or in the present tense, the be verb, it can be MSR, it can be was were, it can be been, right? It depending on the tense you use. But for the future and the modal verb, you need to use the word be in the sentence as well. If you notice here, we are going to bake the bread. The bread is going to be baked. See, every passive sentences need be verb. Okay. So beside using be verb to form the passive sentence, you can also use the word get to form the passive sentence. So here, as you can see an example, but I am not really recommend you to use all of these in your academic writing because it's stated that get is informal. Okay, so try not to use it, just stick to the main point here. Will be plus past participle. Okay, so move on to another in-depth detail. So the usage of passive. Since you already familiar with the form of the passive already, let's look at the usage. Why we need to use passive form? Why we don't just stick to the active form? It's not really complicated. It's easy to understand, not to be confused, right? So we need to use our passive form to express what? Okay, so let's learn this. So if you look at the entry here that is extracted from encyclopedia, you definitely understand the differences here. So here we have the person, Alexander Graham Bell, and the other one is the object, which is telephone. If you look at here, a British inventor who went to live in Canada and then the USA, Bell invented the telephone. So this paragraph mostly emphasize, okay, the person or the subject, which is Mr. Bell, right? On the other hand, if you look at this paragraph, an apparatus, which means a very modern equipment with which people can talk to each other over long distance, the telephone was invented by Alexander Graham Bell. So this paragraph pay close attention to the telephone. It is not about the people who invented it. The people who invented this one, they give an extra information, but it is not, the person here is not really important. The important is the subject, okay? So if you look at the two sentences here, Bell invented the telephone, or the telephone was invented by Bell. So the difference between active and passive form is the focus. If you use the active form, you focus on the people who perform or who does the action. On the other hand, if you use the passive, you don't care whether who does the action, but you pay attention or you want to emphasize who receives the attention or the action, okay? So if you look at here, we say Bell invented the telephone because we are talking about Bell, and the new information is that he invented the phone. So the important person here is Bell. On the other hand, when we say the telephone was invented, which technically is in the passive form, because we are talking about the telephone, right? Here the telephone is more important. We want to emphasize this. And the new information is that it was invented by Bell, which is not really important here. So in this type of structure, we have a keyword or the terminology that you should remember. So the sentence, we have the subject, and the subject is an agent, which means someone who perform or who does the action. So we call the agent. So in active form, the subject and the agent are the same, are only one person, right? Subject and agent is Bell right here. On the other hand, when we talk about the passive form, the subject is not the one who does the action, but it is the one who receives the action. If you look at the example here, the telephone was invented by Bell. So the subject receives the action from the agent, which is Bell. Okay? Here are another expression or preposition that you can also use in the passive form, but it is not really relevant, and I don't want to overwhelm it with this point because it's just the expression or giving detail stuff like that. So just stick to the main point is why you should use passive form and what are the form of the passive. Okay, so everyone, I have prepared some of the exercise for you to practice in order to improve your knowledge regarding to the passive form. So be careful when you form a passive sentence. Remember the general rule: the subject is not the one who does the action, and the form is always be plus past participle. Okay, so everyone, that's it for the first session. Sorry, it is the second session today, and I hope you enjoy this video lesson. And I will drop this document for you in the group so you can print it out or keep it to read by yourself for a better understanding. So everyone, that's it for now. Thank you very much.